Well, a Florida federal judge appointed by Obama, of course, has ordered that Alligator Alcatraz be shut down, the facility needs to be dismantled, and all the imprisoned illegal aliens need to be transferred elsewhere. So here to expose the judicial overreach threatening his state is Florida Attorney General James Uthmeier. So much easier to say for me early in this morning. And when we look at Alligator Alcatraz, we loved it, right? Like the headlines around this were great. President Trump stopping by to tour the facilities. We loved it. But that means, of course, that the judges, the liberal judges, are not going to love it. They're trying to get this all thrown out. But what's the actual situation there on the ground in Florida right now?
Sure. Well, this judge granted an injunction to close the facility here in about a month under NEPA grounds. So, federal environmental regulations she believes needed to be followed, even though this is state land, a state facility, and it's run by state operatives. So if you applied this, then every state jail would have to go through NEPA, which, developers know takes years. So she's wrong on the law. We've appealed the ruling to the 11th Circuit. There's expedited briefing right now, and we hope to prevail. But at the end of the day, nothing is going to stop us from delivering for the Trump administration on immigration enforcement. We've got numerous other facilities that are up and running, and, we hope to get Alligator Alcatraz going again soon. So it's still operating now. She ruled that no new detainees can come in. We're going to keep deporting people out of there. So at some point, the numbers will be low, but we hope to prevail on appeal.
Was this expected, James? Is this
Absolutely. The minute, she was assigned the case, we kind of knew where it was going. She's ruled against us in another immigration case, actually held me in contempt in that case, where she asked me to direct law enforcement across the state to stand down on enforcing our immigration laws. And a lot of these law enforcement don't work for me. Local sheriffs are independently elected. They were not parties to the case, but she wanted them to be bound by her ruling. So she asked me to direct them to stand down. I don't have the authority to do that. So I told her that, and ultimately she held me in contempt. But this is another example of a judge pushing their own policy views when nobody elected them to do so. But at the end of the day, we'll fight back and we will prevail.
Well, Florida is one of the states that's leading on immigration and trying to take it back within your state's rights. And so just how did the idea for Alligator Alcatraz come up in the first place?
Well, our law enforcement has been doing a great job of enforcing immigration laws. We've been delegated authority by the federal government under 287G. All of our sheriffs, our state police, even like our campus police at universities, everybody has this authority to go out and help ICE and Homeland Security do their job. So our number of arrests start going up and up and up. I think we're over 3 times the next state, on immigration enforcement. Which leads to a bed space issue as you're detaining people. So we needed space. I saw the president talking about reopening, the original Alcatraz and thought it was a creative idea. I don't know if it can happen or not. And we've had this plot of land that we've been thinking about for a long time. What do we do with it? It's an old airport, abandoned airport, surrounded by the swamp. And it just seemed like the natural Alcatraz, but it can actually hold thousands of people instead of, of tens or hundreds. So we opened it up. It's been working very well. I think it also incentivizes people illegally in this country. Take the federal government up on their offer to self-deport. Take the $1,000, go back where you came from. Otherwise, you could end up in Alligator Alcatraz.
Now, it seems like this started a race to the top, right? I mean, because it inspired many people in other states. Can you speak a little bit to what red states need to do right now? I think Florida is leading on this issue, to really increase the amount of deportations and encourage people to leave.
Yeah. Well, the Trump administration is doing a terrific job of enforcing the law. We don't know. I mean, we need to take advantage of every minute that he's in office to bring back American sovereignty and secure our border. So Republican states need to team up. We need to help the federal government. Before we got all the new funding and resources in the big, beautiful bill, it was even a bigger prerogative, I think, for red states. But now, if we're going to bring back our country, we've got millions of people to deport. We're, a small chunk of the way there, but we've got to make up for, decades of abdicated responsibility.
What do we need to do with all these judges that are coming in and just trying to overrule things in states, and it's particularly with Florida, but federal judges, we see this all the time right now as well. It's like, hey, these are the people that we elected to go do these things, and they're trying to implement the mandate and what people want. And yet all these judges all across the country right now are just saying, oh, you know what? That doesn't sound like a good idea for us. So we're going to throw it out on whatever grounds that they're doing this.
The short answer is we need to fight back. We need to use every tool we have. The other branches of government need to flex and push the boundaries. Where you have judges pushing policy, not following the law, trying to impose their will on an entire country, we've got to fight back. It's nice to see the Supreme Court reevaluating, some prior opinions. And, we just need to think and use every political power we have. I think conservatives, naturally, we end up losing in court a lot because our nature is to be conservative. Conservative judges don't want to hear cases that they're not supposed to hear. They want to respect jurisdictional boundaries. But at the end of the day, if an activist judge is going to push policy on the American people when nobody elected that judge, we've got to fight back with everything we've got.
One of the things, I'm ignorant about this. Are we keeping track of the people? First off, I assume the plan is, right, if we enforce the law, as you say, Alligator Alcatraz is up and running, then you're going to have people self-deport because they're going to become afraid and realize, I don't want to deal with this.
I think we're up to almost 2 million self-deportations right now, which is a big deal. If we're going to really put a dent in the number of people illegally in this country, a lot of it is going to have to be self-deportations.
Yeah, and so that you see that as increasing. You see good signs. 2 million
Yes.
is great.
Absolutely.
Do you think there'll be actual hope? A lot of people in our audience, they want to see mass deportation for real. And you get this argument that goes back and forth. Is that even possible? Will the Republicans actually, does that be effective and make that happen? You're sort of leading here. And you think that is possible. We could see, millions more leave in the next few years.
I think we certainly could. I mean, we've got to step up our law enforcement operations. Again, Congress passed a bill that provided significant funding and resources to add ICE agents, to provide funding for border security. So we've got to get going, and we got to go fast. I think it's a great sign to see DOD and DHS working on the admin law judges. The left cares so much about due process. They didn't care when people were flooding in the border. They were just handed a piece of paper to show up at some court date like 4 years from then, and nobody did that. But now it's all about process, due process. So if we can have that basic process, which is really just to determine that you are illegally in the country, then we could up the number of deportations.
Don't you think that I remember talking to Harmeet Dillon years ago about this, and we wrote an op-ed together about big tech. And her point was similar to what you're saying with immigration, but with many issues. The problem a lot of times is just enforcing the law as written, right, and prioritizing what you go after, and that's pretty much your job as Attorney General. Can you speak a little bit to that? Because I feel like there's a lot of people on the right who've been frustrated in the last 10 years, and
Right.
and a lot of this comes down to, her point was, there's plenty of law that just needs to be enforced on these big issues, and it's not being,
especially in the civil rights area, which she knows well. I mean, most states have civil rights code, and so as we've had DEI and ESG and all these things, everybody's like, oh, we need to pass a new law to protect women from men in sports. You don't need new laws. Your civil rights laws probably get you there. But going back to immigration, President Trump didn't need a bunch of new laws. He just flipped the switch to turn enforcement back on, and how refreshing it's been. But as states, we also need to take further action to make our states less hospitable to illegal aliens. In Florida, we've certainly done that. We prohibited, you cannot get a driver's license. You certainly cannot get one of these commercial trucker's licenses that we now see other states have been handing out to people that don't even speak English, which results in dangerous crashes on the road that are killing people.
Well, with that in mind, how do you go through and just maybe encourage other red states to join in this fight? Because this all sounds very good to us. And we're like, yes, we want to see more of this.
We certainly encourage them, and we peer pressure them where they don't want to, jump in voluntarily on their own. But we're working together. I think a lot of red states, again, are excited to see a federal government bringing back American sovereignty. And we'll do everything we can with every minute we've got.
Have you seen improvement there? I mean, in terms of the last really 5 to 10 years, with other red state attorney generals sort of taking more and more action? You see,
we've got a great, a great lineup of Republican AGs. I think you've got people that are aggressive and want to protect, individual liberties of Americans. And I believe the AGs are kind of the first line of defense when it comes to protecting states' rights and protecting the rights of citizens in those states.
We're talking about illegals, and the U.S. Census has been a hot topic issue as well. I know that a lot of people are like, hey, you know what? The 2020, there was a lot of stuff going on in 2020. We don't know, COVID time, pandemic, there was so much. But when you look at the census, are you one of those people that's like, okay, you know what, maybe we should take another look at this, not wait till 2030, because there was so much that was happening in 2020, and they're trying to go through and count the number of illegals. And I mean,
look, the census, a lot of people, average people at home, they just view this as some number crunching bureaucratic effort, to count the population every 10 years. But the reality is, it is a monumental act in determining electoral power for the states that results in deciding who our next president is, in deciding how many members of Congress a state gets, and deciding billions of dollars in federal funding and how it's allocated. And we've been giving disproportionately high amounts of electoral power to sanctuary states that are filled with a bunch of illegals. That is not what our founders would have wanted. Our Constitution was written for we, the people of the United States. The Constitution, the government is supposed to serve U.S. citizens. If you allow California and other states to get heightened power based on just who happens to be present in the state, when some bureaucrat walks around counting people, that could be easily abused. You could have foreign adversaries flooding certain jurisdictions at times of the year in order to sway an election one way or the other. So we've kind of created this problem over time, just the precedent of how we've done it. But I believe it's legally wrong, and I commend President Trump for wanting to address it immediately. But it needs to happen yesterday if we're actually going to get this done and do it right.
I think this is one of those issues where once people are aware of it, it's shocking. It's shocking to common sense, right? But unfortunately, we don't live in a world governed by common sense, but we do hopefully live in a world governed by the rule of law. So how do you see this playing out in the courts?
Well, it's going to get litigated. Obviously, the Census Bureau under Trump's first term tried to ask a question about whether or not you're a U.S. citizen. And despite that question having been asked for over 150 years before President Obama took it off the census, the Supreme Court said the Trump administration did not go about the right process of asking it. So, it will be litigated, hotly contested. But at the end of the day, I think anybody that really opens their eyes to the fact that states are giving power to people that cannot legally vote, it is common sense. And it's in line with our Constitution to make this correction. So it's going to be a long fight, but I'm optimistic that we could prevail.
Well, hey, we're here in Washington, D.C., and one of the things you notice, first off, the weather is beautiful. I'm loving my life walking around this fair city. But you notice something walking around here, something that you've been talking about. I see commenting on the left. You notice people in uniforms,
right.
In camouflage uniforms walking around. I heard it's something to do with fascism. I don't know.
We've heard a lot of it on the streets. The people are very convinced on the streets right now.
It's amazing stopping gang violence, stopping murders, how controversial it could be.
What is it like to see these people critique this, again, common sense policy for you sitting there as Attorney General in Florida and coming up here?
It's mind boggling, but I think the left is really shooting itself in the foot when they fight back on things like this. And I think the same is true with border security. The American people, no matter what party you are, they want a safe and sovereign country. They want their kids to be safe from dangers like fentanyl. And at the end of the day, you see some mayors now speaking up saying, well, hey, actually, this thing, public safety is kind of nice. We need more of it. So, I'm even hesitant to stay at hotels in D.C. sometimes. The Marriott downtown, there was a shooting the last time I was here. But you know what? It feels pretty dang safe right now, with the added support.
It's been crazy just to see, especially Chicago has been the one that has been getting all the headlines for all the crime that they have there. And they're like, you know what? We like our crime. Yeah. We're going to keep it. You guys are not going to come in here. You're not going to make our streets safer. And we're like, hold on, wait a minute, right? Is this crazy right now? Is this where we live, that just because it's a Republican idea, we can't go through and have people be safe in their own streets?
I have nothing to add. That's exactly, it's unbelievable.
But when you look at just the differences right now that we're seeing between the right and the left as a whole, right? Like, the divide is growing even greater right now.
Right.
If it's something that has been a Republican idea, well, we have to reject that wholly. We can't allow any of that. And I think that Trump has been doing a good job with this. We've talked about this on the show before, like the 80-20 issues. He's putting every 80-20 issue up. And he's like, you want to go through and you want to defend crime? Go ahead.
I tell people in Florida, I mean, there are thousands of good policy ideas we could discuss. Thousands. I mean, we can always make things better for families and our citizens. But none of them matter if you don't have public safety. Mm-hmm. Like, until you check that box, you really shouldn't move on to everything else. And I think the president knows that. At the end of the day, we've got people flocking to Florida still, even in the post-COVID era. Mm-hmm. And we had, several 100,000 more registered Democrats back when the governor got elected. Today, we're almost at like 1.5 million more registered Republicans, because people are coming to the state. And when they buy new homes, they tell the builders, they do a survey and they all say, I came here because of safety. I lived in Washington, D.C., and my neighbor, on Capitol Hill got stabbed walking to the car in the morning. And I don't want to deal with that. Mm-hmm. I don't blame them. Everybody wants safety for their families. Then we can work on everything else.
Can we speak just real quick on speaking of safety on the drug issue? Because I feel like it gets lost in the shuffle. Yeah. It's not really part of like the culture wars anymore. We still face a real problem with drug abuse in this country. The president just, tweeted out a boat full of people that is no more, that was blown up, Venezuelan, I believe. Mm-hmm. But you're in Florida. That's always been an issue. You are south. Right. So what are your thoughts on where that battle is now?
Well, it's certainly still raging. I think the best way to combat it is to make examples out of people. So, I mean, we've heightened penalties. If you are caught distributing fentanyl, it is a much higher penalty today than it was 6 years ago.
I just got to interrupt you. So what you're saying is if you put people in jail,
that's a deterrent.
Crime goes down.
That's right. So we're putting people in jail. I don't believe in plea deals. I'm not a soft on crime guy. I want to get danger off the streets as long as possible. And today it comes in different forms. I mean, marijuana laced with fentanyl, it's killing kids that are not, hard drug abusers. And families are shocked. And a lot of it's coming from China. It's a new warfare that they've flooded through the open border to get into communities across the country. We're seeing stuff, in the new form of vapes and things coming from China into convenience stores, and people don't even know what chemicals are really in it. But at the end of the day, it's just tough enforcement, tough penalties. Let's show people, if you want to do this, you better be ready to live in a jail cell for the rest of your life.
The country changed when Ron DeSantis was elected as the governor of Florida. It could have gone drastically one way, and it, thankfully for the country, went the way that it did. Just talk a little bit about Florida, the trajectory that we have seen in the state, and honestly, because what it means for the country has been very significant.
Sure. Well, for people that don't remember, Ron DeSantis won by the most narrow of margins in Florida. We were very much a purple state. We are not anymore. And then COVID hit shortly thereafter, and he made tough decisions. He studied the data. Any study that was out there in the world, he reviewed it, got his hands on it, and ultimately made tough decisions that other governors were not willing to make, to keep our schools open, to keep our churches open, to keep our businesses open. And Florida came out of COVID, now we're known as the free state of Florida. It's literally on the road signs when you drive in. That came out of COVID. We are ranked number one in almost every single meaningful metric, from GDP growth to new business formations to education standards. You name it, we're the best. And a lot of that is because we did not alter our way of life. We kept things open. We dealt with adverse health consequences to the best of our ability. But at the end of the day, we did not suffer any worse than any other state. And, our kids, our families, they didn't have their life disrupted. So his leadership, I think, inspired a lot of other states to stay strong. And at the end of the day, people moved with their feet and they flocked to states like Florida that, provide a better way of life. And certainly going back again to the foundational principle, a safe place to raise a family.
What I love about this is a race to the top. I mean, so as someone in media and someone who lives in Texas, we've loved watching this example in this race. There's a little bit of competition, a little healthy competition between red states in the last 8 years.
Texas always was the state with the most pride. I would say, you knew people from Texas loved their state. And I think coming out of COVID, Floridians now, they love being Floridians. They're proud of it.
Are you still open for U-Hauls from New York? Is the state still open? People need to know.
We had a lot of U-Hauls coming in, and then we started opening the back door and finding illegals. So now our policy there has changed a little bit.